Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Australia's private college sector has been plagued for decades by shonky operators, fake qualifications and financial fraud. Now the regulator has started cracking down, deregistering almost 80 private colleges over the past 2 years, leaving nearly 20,000 students with now worthless diplomas. Investigative reporter Adele Ferguson met one of them.
I was just disappointed and frustrated. It's kind of like just shatters your reality.
2 years ago, Victorian man Say Chan decided he wanted a career change.
I wanted to teach English to community groups like refugees or disadvantaged groups.
He had previous experience teaching at community organisations. So he contacted a business called Get Certified Australia, which said they could help him obtain a certificate in training and assessment, a formal recognition of his prior work experience.
They were just telling me, we just need some information from you and we just need some proof or demonstration of what you've done in the past to be able to justify the Cert 4 in training and assessment.
Say paid $2,000 and within weeks his qualification arrived.
I paid for it and I wanted a Cert 4 in training and assessment. This is definitely not a Cert 4 in training and assessment.
Instead, he was issued a diploma in community services with a transcript detailing 20 subjects he'd never completed.
I started asking questions and went, yeah, what's happening with the certificate or what's going on? And I wasn't getting a response and they were being cagey about it. They were trying to butter me up and say, oh, we'll give you whatever certificate or diploma you want, just tell us what you want. And I jokingly said, how about a PhD?
When he threatened to report the provider, they disappeared. He then went to authorities to raise the alarm.
The certificates could be like childcare or personal care, and for me, that's people's lives. What if that was someone was looking after my child, someone was looking after my grandparents?
Investigative reporter Adele Ferguson joins us now. Adele, welcome to the programme. Now, I understand from you that Say is one of more than 18,000 students who've had their qualifications cancelled in the last 4 months by the regulator. It's an incredible number. Just how pervasive is this issue?
Oh, it's really pervasive, Sarah. There are 4,000 private colleges in Australia and industry insiders estimate about a third of them are shonky. That's domestic and international. So it's huge.
In terms of numbers then, how many training organisations are embroiled in this? What are the regulators looking at?
So the regulators right now are saying that there are 138 colleges that they are targeting for serious matters. That includes fraud, fabrication of qualifications and assessments, and international criminal networks.
Now, just to stay with, first of all, before we go to the criminals, let's start with the kinds of qualifications, because that's what people will be most concerned about. What sorts of qualifications, apart from what we saw with Say, are being fabricated?
Well, this is what's really disturbing about it. Some of the qualifications include childcare, aged care, community services, even in building companies, they've got people who have got fabricated qualifications. So they're going out on building sites and building apartment blocks. And so that's why there are some real issues with buildings.
So just a question about the regulator and what they're doing here. If you're someone who's got a child in childcare or you're wondering about people working on a building site, how do you find out whether their qualifications have come from one of these shonky providers?
Well, therein lies the problem, because it is so pervasive. The regulator has been cracking down on this. The government tipped in another $30-odd million a couple of years ago to start really getting into it. And there's a real problem about, are some of these people properly educated?
Now, who then, come back to the people who are running these colleges, who's running them? Are they fly-by-night, or is it something more organised and more sinister than that even?
It ranges. There are some legitimate operators who are there for the right reasons, and then there are some who are just greedy and they see a quick buck to be made, it's not that hard to set one up. And then you've got these criminal networks that span right round the world. They embroil employment agents, immigration agents, and they bring students in and they just milk them dry.
Is there a role for organised crime in these fake colleges?
Oh, absolutely. No question about that.
And is that being investigated as far as we know?
Yes, it is.
Now, and are we talking about just international colleges, or are these domestic Australian institutions as well?
It's also domestic Australian institutions. So in October last year, 4 colleges got busted, and that's where the 18,000 students came from. 3 of those colleges were domestic, so they were targeted at domestic students.
Is this a global problem, or are other countries dealing with a similar issue to do with fabrication of people's qualifications?
It's a global problem because there's big money in it. You know, in Australia alone, private colleges make $7 billion a year in revenue. Where it differs in other countries such as Germany and the UK, they have external assessment systems. Here, the colleges are effectively marking their own homework.
Is there will in the political world to change this, to change the way these colleges operate?
At the moment, there isn't a strong will because this has been going on for decades. The government recently gave a little bit more money to the regulator to target the shonks and to start auditing them with external assessors. But they don't have enough money. They need more money to look at a lot more of these colleges, and a way to fix it overnight really to get rid of some of these shonks is to have an external assessment system.
And in the meantime, audience watching, individuals check people's qualifications very carefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adele Ferguson, thank you very much for the investigation and for joining me as always.
Thank you.
Antoinette,